So we're going to talk about the cyber art or emotional cyber arsonist and a recent study, as well as not only here but overseas. An internet emotional arsonist, also known as a troll, is someone who comes into a discussion and posts comments designed to upset or disrupt a conversation. Often, in fact, it seems like there is no real purpose behind those comments except to upset everyone else involved, i.e., gaslighting. So these folks will lie, exaggerate, and offend just to get a response. It was discovered that they are actually horrible people, according to the doctors and the psychologists. And this is why the study linked to what we call the dark tetrad of the personality traits. Our goal here tonight is to discuss how these personalities are impacting criminal investigations and victims of crime and why it is so dangerous. Former supervisor of the Behavior Science Unit of the FBI and the executive director of the Cold Case Foundation. Absolutely love this guy. Right behind him, Mr. Dead Body himself, former coroner investigator, nice. Dean Jackson. This guy's seen more dead people than I think, heaven. I'm not really sure yet, but certainly do love him. And right behind him, across the pond in the UK, is Mr. James Patrick. James, good evening.
Evening, everybody. How are we?
He hails from the UK and Scotland Yard. An amazing human being. Show him some love. Show him where you guys are all at up in the North Pole, Northern Light. I love it. I absolutely love it. Behind him is Mr. T. What can we say about Mr. T? He has worked with the military all around the world, a lot of other secret stuff that we're not allowed to talk about, quite frankly. And you'll notice he matches Greg and Dean. And of course, last but not least, Mr. AJ Jackson. He's our social guy. This guy knows more about social media and probably the content that we're going to talk about this evening than all of us combined here this evening. Well, let's start off, with a couple of slides that I put together, just to kind of give us a baseline on what some of these research, what some of the most current research was showing about this particular problem. And, Dean, you actually came up with the name of tonight's presentation. Tell me what you were thinking when you came up with emotional cyber arsonist.
Well, when we were talking about it, and everybody was kind of talking about how it feels and what you're seeing online and maybe how people are responding, I flashed back to actually some videos that I've seen from cases where arsonists have gone in and started fires and then come back and found a place that they could watch the fire from. And they're doing a narrative. And so one in particular kind of was popping into my brain, and this guy was just going off about how beautiful it was and look at the flames and was getting excited. Oh, there comes more fire trucks. And it was just this building thing. And I think as we were talking about, why people do this and why people get so excited about this type of behavior on the internet, I just saw a real correlation between the two. And we were all kind of, I think, trying to say, well, how do we articulate this? And that's when I threw on the table this possibility of thinking at it, the extremist as being really what we would call emotional arsonists. People that go out and love to destroy people. They don't even have to put any hands on. They can just start the flames and then just sit back and watch the destructive nature of it.
Awesome.
The dark triad, otherwise known as, and these are personality characteristics of certain types of offenders, oftentimes associated with antisocial personality disorders, people who have been diagnosed with that disorder. Of course, there's a number of different classifications within that, which include the top of the heap, so to speak, that of the psychopath. So there are differing, almost sequential, if you will, types of characteristics that are added on as you become more and more familiar with different types of personalities and serious levels of psychopathology or antisocial personality disorder. And according to the dark tetrad, it includes these three particular, sometimes four. It depends on who you're talking to. Typically, it was originally identified as three, and that is Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy. Some experts believe that they should add to that sadism, which I think certainly applies. I guess we'll leave that up to the psychological profession to make that determination. But you also have this unemotional callousness that's very consistent with these individuals. There's no feeling, there's no sense of morality, there's no sense of empathy. Potentially very dangerous individuals because they have no personal morality as standards to conduct their lives by, and particularly as it relates to other people. And then psychopathology, which typically has been diagnosed as an individual, as you can see there, individuals who are focused on, or rather their characteristics include a lack of empathy, no regret, no remorse in their interaction with people. So they're capable of doing anything without that standard personality core principle of empathy. For example, they can't sense or feel the pain of another individual. So it doesn't prevent them from doing certain things to other people or doing things that may affect other people.
You know, Greg, what you're saying also, if people were tending to want to know a great example of a psychopath, read Mein Kampf or do some study about Hitler, and you'll be in that arena.
Yep, absolutely. And then finally, they've included sadism, and that typically just has to do with an individual who seeks pleasure through the suffering of other people, and that they are the ones that inflict that suffering, that they achieve ultimate gratification by seeing in the eyes of a victim, for example, or watching the effects upon a victim, their behavior as being responsible for that pain and suffering.
Well, I think, unfortunately, I think it crosses social, economic boundaries. I think it covers all age groups, because I think it just depends upon, what we're talking about, the nature of this being. But I mean, you've got young people, small kids who are getting out and engaging on the internet, and being manipulated or dealing with some of these types of personalities, to the other end of the spectrum, which we're dealing with senior citizens who are being oftentimes trolled and manipulated. And, in some cases, I think the driving factor obviously there can be a point to it, and that can be because there is a spectrum here, right? So I think in some ways it's just nitpicking at people, maybe on the very simplest form. There may be people who see it as a way to elevate themselves by stepping on other people. For some people, there's totally a financial component here. They're driven by trying to see if they can manipulate elderly people and get money out of them. But I think the really scary people are the people Greg was just talking about, who this is about creating chaos. This is about creating conflict. And that's where, believe it or not, that's where their joy and what really gets them going is to watch other people suffer and almost to sit back and say, man, did you see what, and if they can get somebody else to go out and watch that, then it's almost like they've got an audience for what they're doing.
So you've got this group of people who are looking to damage others. They're looking for a reaction. They actually feed on hurt like vampires. They're just awful people. And there are sites across the internet which are actually dedicated to identifying what they call lulz cows. Now, what this means is that they pick out an individual and they have a secret forum where they get together and decide how they're going to make this person's life miserable and how far to take it. And that can be as far as defining the outcome, which might be directing this person to self-harm or suicide. And they pursue it doggedly, and it's organized stuff. It's awful. The core advice really, and this goes across professional work that I do with my company when I'm not doing cold case live stuff, give them absolutely nothing. Don't negotiate with these people because you can't. But you do have to expect that they're going to come back again and again and again. They're not going away. So you're in it for the long haul, and it could take years to shake off a troll who has decided that you're their number one. Your starting points, really, don't bother speaking to them. It's what they want. They feed on seeing the interaction. They feed on other people seeing the interaction and making that footprint bigger.
And that's what it is. It's a game to them. And the more they can manipulate you, it's like sticking a car key in the ignition, and they start you up and they rev your engine, and they can make it till it explodes. And all they're doing is sitting back, eating popcorn, watching the festivities.
You see a comment, you see a message, something where somebody's, saying that they've got dirt on you, or they've got, something that they're trying to manipulate an action from you. First thing that you can do, best thing that you can do, delete if you can delete, block if you can block, ignore if you can ignore. And I mean, the real thing is, as long as you don't let them get a hook in you to start with, you can block new accounts all day long. So that's kind of what I try to make sure everyone, in my world kind of knows getting into it. If you're having an emotional reaction, stop. I don't care if it's a news story that you think you're reading. I don't care if it's a hyper, emotional side of things, positive or negative. Stop. Really take time to think it through. Don't let yourself go to that next action of clicking a link or responding or something else. It's like, it almost goes back to that old adage. I'm sure everyone's mom told them at some point, never write a letter in anger, right? Wait until you calm down. Same basic kind of a thing. If somebody's commenting or doing something like that on some of your social media, rather than engaging with them initially, step away from it. Because, the internet's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's great advice.
If you really need to engage, you'll be able to do that later.